My name is Veronica, and I've always been the kind of person who doesn't mind staying late at work. I'm in my early 30s, no husband or kids, so there's never really a rush to get home. I work as an admin assistant in the finance department at a mid-sized logistics company, updating invoices, organizing expense folders, and closing out the basic monthly reports. The pay isn't great, but it covers the bills, and I'm comfortable enough. That night was a Thursday, a little after 8 p.m. We had a report due first thing in the morning, and I'd fallen behind earlier in the week. My supervisor, Mark, left around 7, reminding me to double-check the numbers on page 3. Everyone else followed not long after. By 8, every cubicle on the floor was dark, except mine, lit only by the soft glow of my monitor and the emergency exit signs reflecting in the windows. The office was a grid of gray cubicles fading into shadow, empty chairs tucked under narrow desks. A water cooler stood near a column, and the copier's standby light blinked in the dark. I told myself I was lucky to have the place to myself. That illusion cracked when I heard the sound behind me. A chair rolling across the floor. It wasn't loud, just a soft, rubbery glide, enough to make me pause mid-typing. I glanced over my shoulder. All the cubicles behind me were dark and empty. I told myself the building settled. It did that sometimes. Old steel, old joints, temperature shifts. I forced my eyes back to the screen and turned up the volume in my earbuds. Music filled my head. Eventually, I forgot the sound and focused on work again. Around 9, my legs started to cramp, so I stood to stretch. That's when I noticed the light in the break room. I was sure it had been off earlier. Did I leave it on? I wasn't scared, just uneasy. I assumed the energy drink I'd had to stay awake was messing with my nerves. The moment I reached the break room, everything looked normal. A small round table, 3 plastic chairs, a vending machine humming against the wall, a microwave with a blinking clock that was always wrong. But the coffee machine's green LED glowed faintly. On the counter sat a single mug, and it was still warm. I could see a thin thread of steam curled into the dim air, like someone had been there just minutes earlier. My stomach tightened. The building locked itself automatically at 8:30. No late entries. No exceptions. I stepped closer. The mug wasn't one of the office ones. It was dark blue, chipped near the rim. I didn't recognize it. Behind me, somewhere in the office, a chair rolled again. But this time was faster. I backed out of the break room and walked, too quickly, back to my desk. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I froze. A notification. Just a stupid meme Mark had sent about rewatching The Office for the 10th time. The normality of it almost grounded me. Then I saw movement. Not a figure, not a reflection. Just the slow spinning of a swivel chair in one of the empty cubicles across the floor. It turned once, twice, then slowed, like someone had just let go of it. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. My mind raced. Was someone messing with me? A prank? Or was there someone there I just couldn't see? I snatched my bag from under the desk and powered down my computer with shaking hands. The screen went black, taking the last patch of comfort with it. The office plunged into shadow, lit only by emergency lights and the pale glow from the windows overlooking the street far below. As I headed for the elevator, I heard a louder noise behind me. A hard crash, like something heavy hitting the floor. I stopped, took a breath, and faced the dark office. I meant to call out loud, but my throat tightened and the sound came out broken, almost like a whimper. My mouth felt dry, my chest was tight, and I had to force air into my lungs before I could even finish the words. Is anyone there? For a second, there was only silence. Then I heard it. A low, distorted laugh echoing between the cubicles. I turned and ran. My shoes slapped against the polished floor as I sprinted for the elevator. It felt impossibly far away. I slammed my thumb on the call button once, twice, 3 times. I glanced at the reflective surface of a nearby glass wall. For just a second, I thought I saw movement behind me. Not a body, just a shifting distortion in the darkness, like heat rising from asphalt. The elevator dinged. The doors opened slowly. Too slowly. I dove inside and mashed the lobby button. The doors began to close, inch by inch. Through the narrowing gap, I expected to see someone rush forward. Instead, I saw nothing. Just the empty office staring back at me. The doors sealed. Only then did I realize I'd been holding my breath. The descent felt endless. When the elevator finally opened to the lobby, the security guard looked up from his desk. "You're late," he said. I laughed weakly. "You have no idea." He frowned at my expression. "You okay?" I hesitated. "Did anyone come up to my floor after 8? He turned his monitor toward me. The security feed showed my floor. Empty cubicles, empty hallways. "No activity for almost an hour," he said. "You were the only one up there." My blood went cold. I went home, and the report never got finished that night. The next day, since I hadn't finished the report, Mark called me into his office. I told him everything. The noise of the chair rolling, the warm mug with steam still rising from it, the crash in the dark, and the laugh I heard between the cubicles. At first, he looked skeptical. Then, as I kept talking, that skepticism shifted. His posture softened. He leaned back, rubbed his temples, and asked me to repeat certain parts. By the time I finished, his voice was lower, careful. He said it didn't make sense, but he also said I didn't look like I was joking. He pulled up the security footage again. There was nothing. No movement, no mug, no one on my floor. Still, when he turned back to me, the doubt in his face was mixed with concern. I'd worked there for 3 years, and he knew I wouldn't abandon work without a serious reason. We finished the report late. After that, I never stayed alone in the office. For a while, everything was fine, until 2 weeks later. In the middle of a normal workday, I walked into the break room and saw the same coffee mug, in the same spot, and it was steaming. 2 coworkers were there, Tina and Eric. I asked them whose mug it was. They both said they didn't know. When they'd entered the break room, the cup was already there. I froze. I went straight to Mark. We checked the cameras. The moment the mug appeared on the footage, the image glitched. Static, distortion, a brief blackout. When the video came back, the mug was already on the counter. No one was visible. After that, I couldn't concentrate anymore. I lived with a constant sense of fear. A few weeks later, I quit. I still don't know what really happened. One of my friends suggested that maybe I was dealing with something not fully natural. I don't believe in that kind of thing. But I will say this. Ever since then, I've never been able to stay alone in quiet places the same way again. And I can't help but hope that leaving that office was enough to make it stop. My name is Ryan, and this happened about a year ago. I was 26 at the time, working on the 6th floor of an office building downtown, and I was a junior accounts clerk in the billing department. The job itself was boring and predictable, but the people were nice, and they made the days go by fast. So every morning started the same way. I'd badge in through the glass doors on the ground floor, hear the turnstile click behind me, and cross the lobby to the elevator, which always smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals. The elevator ride to the 6th floor only took a few seconds. The building wasn't tall, and the elevator was large for how few floors there were. Because of that, no one ever used the stairs. Not me. Not anyone I worked with. And besides that, the stairwell had a heavy metal door that never closed quietly. Every time it shut, it made a dull metallic thud that carried down the hall. You could hear it from almost anywhere on the floor. Despite that, Evan only used the stairs. Evan had short hair and always wore neutral clothes, black, gray, beige. He was quiet, avoided crowds and small talk, and only spoke when spoken to. Even though he tried to stay unnoticed, It was hard not to notice him, because every time that heavy stairwell door slammed shut with that dull metallic thud, he was the only one walking away from it. At first, I didn't think much of it. A lot of people don't like elevators. Some people get claustrophobic. Some people just prefer stairs. But that was before things at work started to change. Over the next few weeks, my boss developed this habit of showing up at my desk just as I was about to leave. Those quick tasks always turned into another full hour of work. I didn't want to seem difficult, so I stayed. That's when I started paying attention to Evan. At the end of the day, he checked the hallway before leaving, like he was making sure no one else was nearby. He left exactly on time, never early, never late. And whenever the boss tried to keep him with extra work, he always found a reason to leave anyway. It didn't feel like laziness, and it didn't feel intentional either. It felt like fear. That's when I realized something else. He never went near the elevator. The elevator was old. It groaned before it moved, shuddered when it stopped, and the number panel was scratched and barely lit. But the stairwell was worse. Dark, echoing, nothing but old concrete walls, and that faint chemical smell drifting up from the storage room below. And Evan noticed things no one else did. Lights that flickered, doors that never fully closed, small noises everyone else ignored. No one really paid attention to him either. Not until I did. It was around 8 when I packed up to leave. I was tired, hungry, ready to go home. The elevator was still on the first floor, so I had to wait for it to come up. That's when I saw the yellow post-it note stuck to the railing beside the button panel. My name was written on it. Inside, it only said one thing: "Don't take the elevator tonight." I honestly thought it was a joke, but when I crumpled the note to throw it away, I spotted a loose screw on the floor near the elevator door. It made me think of my brother taking apart electronics as a kid. Everything would work again afterward, but there were always leftover pieces on the ground. Then the elevator arrived with a soft ding that felt too normal for how unsettled I suddenly felt. I told myself it was pathetic to overthink a loose screw, but I turned toward the stairwell instead, telling myself the extra steps would help burn off the dessert I shouldn't have eaten at lunch. Halfway down between the third and second floors, I heard the stairwell door slam somewhere above me with that same dull metallic thud I remembered from the floor. A second later, I heard footsteps above me. I knew it was strange for me to be in the stairwell, so it shouldn't have been strange for anyone else to be there either. Still, something didn't feel right. A bad feeling settled in, and I picked up my pace, taking the steps 2 at a time. I didn't stop until I pushed through the stairwell door into the lobby. The security guard looked at me like I'd come from the wrong side of the building. The next morning, Evan didn't show up. HR said he'd resigned overnight. Later, a woman from the cleaning staff told me something I hadn't heard before. A few weeks earlier, someone had been injured in the elevator. She said the only reason the person was found in time was because someone coming out of the stairwell heard the noise and ran to help. Not badly, but enough that the elevator had been shut down for repairs. No one in my department had mentioned it. She also complained that the technical room beside the stairwell had been left open that same morning, and that it was dangerous, because it wasn't supposed to be accessible for just anyone to walk into. Then, for some reason, I checked the maintenance log. It said the elevator had been shut down at 5 p.m., but I'd used it at 8. It worked. That's when it hit me that something was seriously wrong. I dug the crumpled note out of my trash, relieved I hadn't thrown it away. I pulled out a few old reports Evan had worked on, spread them across my desk, and started comparing the handwriting line by line. It was the same. The note had been written by Evan, and once I saw that, I started replaying every interaction I'd ever had with him. Around that same week, when I started staying a little later than usual, Evan noticed. He walked past my desk, paused for a second, and asked me something I didn't understand at the time. If something went wrong in here, would anyone hear you? I laughed it off back then. It sounded like a weird attempt at a joke, or maybe he was just being awkward. I didn't think much about it after that. On the next day, right after lunch, he passed by my desk again and quietly set something down. A small can of pepper spray. No comment, no explanation. He didn't even look at me. At the time, I thought he was just being considerate. I'd been leaving late and the streets downtown weren't the safest after dark. I assumed he was telling me to be careful on my way home, not warning me about anything inside the office. But now, looking back, it fits a little too well with everything else. A few weeks later, I quit. Not all at once, not dramatically. I just stopped feeling safe there. Every sound made me pause. Every shadow near the stairwell caught my eye. I started noticing things I'd never cared about before. Who arrived first? Who left last? Which doors were open? Which ones weren't? I tried to figure out what Evan had seen. I checked employee records, old schedules, internal emails, nothing. I tried to find him online. No social media, no trace. It was like he had never existed outside that office. Even now, I still catch myself thinking about it, replaying the post-it, the pepper spray, the sound of that door. Sometimes I wonder if I just got paranoid. If all of it was nothing more than a chain of coincidences I glued together because I was tired and working too late. Other times I'm sure there was something in that building, something I never saw, but Evan did. And then there's the worst question of all. Was I just another part of Evan's paranoia? Or was he trying to protect me from something I never saw? I don't know what really happened. Maybe I never will. All I know is this. Whatever Evan knew, I think I got just close enough to feel it. My name is John, and back then I was 20. I was never the popular type, never the kind of guy who caught girls' attention or anything like that. But I've always tried to be polite at work, not because I'm outgoing, but because avoiding tension always felt easier than dealing with it. So I was used to being unnoticed, to the point where I assumed everyone else played by the same quiet rules. But Laura didn't. And maybe that's why I didn't see the danger coming. Back then, I used to work in customer support, just answering emails, phone calls, solving minor issues. Our department occupied the quieter half of the third floor. My desk was by the windows, right next to the break room. A small space with flickering lights and a groaning coffee machine. The elevator sat in the center of the floor, old enough that you could hear it arriving before the doors even opened. Laura's team worked on the opposite side of the room. She had no real reason to wander over to my area, but she always did. Laura was new, hired as an assistant for another team. Not memorable at first glance. Thin, pale, hair pulled back so tight it sharpened every part of her expression. She smiled too often, too wide, and I smiled back, because that's what polite people do. The first time we actually spoke, really spoke, it was over something stupid. I was struggling with the copy machine, a paper jam I couldn't clear. I remember muttering under my breath, embarrassed by how ridiculous I must have looked. She appeared beside me without a sound and reached over my shoulder to press a hidden latch I hadn't seen. "There," she said softly. "It sticks sometimes." Our hands brushed for half a second as the tray slid out. It was an accident. At least it felt like one at the time. I smiled, thanked her, made a small joke about machines hating me. She smiled back. Then she said lightly, "You always sit by the window, right?" It wasn't a strange question on its own. Plenty of people noticed where others sat. I nodded, said yeah, it helped me feel less boxed in. She just held my gaze a second longer than necessary, like she was testing how much she could say without it sounding strange. After that, she started showing up more often. At first, it was easy to explain away. In the break room, by the elevator, behind me at the water cooler. She never announced herself, she just appeared. And even though she had nothing to do on our side of the floor, she kept drifting into my space. I told myself it was normal. New job, new people. Maybe she was trying too hard to fit in. Then it started happening every single day. Once I changed my lunch break by 15 minutes on a whim. I went down early to avoid the crowd. She was already there, leaning against the counter with her coffee, like she'd been waiting. Another time I took the long way around the floor to avoid the hallway by the elevator. She passed me halfway through, walking the opposite direction, and smiled like it had all been a coincidence. After a while, it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like orbit. One morning, she mentioned a bakery she liked, one located at the bottom of my street. I hadn't told her where I lived. I forced a laugh and told myself she meant a different place. But later that same afternoon, she referenced a landmark on the same block, the dry cleaner with the cracked sign, the bus stop beside the mural. It wasn't accidental. She knew. I started testing small changes without telling anyone. I left by a different exit. She appeared there too. I took the stairs instead of the elevator one evening. The next day, she asked casually if I'd been sore from the extra steps. I hadn't told her I'd used the stairs. A week later, things crossed into something I couldn't pretend was harmless. I was reorganizing papers at my desk when she said, offhandedly, that she liked how the curtains in my living room softened the light. I froze mid-motion. I never posted photos of my apartment, never described it. No coworker had ever been over. I kept my voice steady as I asked what she meant. She tilted her head, as if confused by my confusion, and said, "Just a guess," with that same easy smile. A cold pressure settled in my chest. I tried to rationalize it. Lucky guess, vague comment, coincidence, but there was no honest explanation. She had been close enough to look through my windows, or worse. I told a coworker, someone I thought would take it seriously. He laughed, said she probably liked me. Then he joked that I should give her a chance, and I immediately regretted saying anything. After that, I changed the way I lived in small, careful ways. I kept my curtains closed during the day. I stopped using the balcony. I didn't leave lights on at night. A part of me hoped that if she couldn't see in, she'd lose interest. A few days later, I arrived early and found something waiting on my desk. A small candle, the same brand I kept in my living room. Beside it, a folded note in her handwriting. "Thought you might need a new one. You leave yours burning longer than you should." Sweet. And terrifying. I stared at that candle for a long time before touching it. My hands shook as I brought the note to my supervisor. I explained everything. Every detail, every comment, every moment that had felt wrong. I tried not to sound paranoid, but hearing myself say it out loud made the fear feel sharper. She didn't laugh. She didn't brush it off. Her face tightened with concern in a way that made everything suddenly feel real. She said she would speak to Laura's manager and told me to avoid Laura for the rest of the day. The next morning, Laura's desk was empty. The morning after, HR announced she was no longer with the company. Later, I overheard fragments of conversations. Her team had been complaining for weeks. Boundary issues, inappropriate behavior, unpredictability. It sounded like something had been brewing long before she ever started watching me. But removal doesn't erase presence. It leaves a space where fear settles like dust. Even after she was gone, I caught myself seeing her everywhere. A reflection in the glass. A figure standing too still near the corner of my building. Someone waiting at the bus stop who almost looked like her from behind. Each time, my pulse spiked before reality hurried to correct me. I didn't go back to my apartment right away. I stayed with my parents, sleeping deeper than I had in months. Eventually, I moved. New neighborhood, new locks, new routines. For a while, life felt normal again. Mostly. Sometimes when I switch off the lights or close the curtains, I still get that quiet, crawling feeling that someone is watching. Someone convinced they know me better than I ever allowed. Someone who mistook politeness for an invitation and decided they were owed access to parts of my life I never offered. And I learned something I wish I had understood sooner. Being nice is easy, but letting people believe your kindness belongs to them, that can cost you far more than you're ever prepared to lose.